House of David, Season 3, Episode 1 feels like a warning, like the story is done being patient. Season 2 ended with David running for his life, and now Season 3 is basically saying, no more hiding, no more mercy, no more peace. And if you thought Saul was dangerous before, just wait, because when a king is desperate, he doesn't fight fair, he doesn't chase the soldier, he targets the family, and that is exactly why this Episode 1 trailer has me completely stressed in the best way possible. This first look at Season 3, Episode 1 doesn't feel like a normal trailer. It feels like the beginning of a storm, and David is standing right in the middle of it. Because where we left off in Season 2, David wasn't just escaping Saul's plan, he was escaping a whole system that had turned against him. He lost more than safety. He lost comfort. He lost home. And most painfully, he lost Mihal, the one person he wanted by his side. Honestly, I still haven't gotten over that. After everything David sacrificed, seeing him walk away alone was heartbreaking. And what makes it worse is that Saul didn't even win in a clean way. It wasn't victory, it was betrayal, manipulation, fear, and lies. David did the right thing and still had to pay the price. But this is where Season 3 starts to feel different. Because David is not just a young man trying to survive anymore. He is becoming a leader, whether he wants that burden or not. And the Episode 1 first look makes it clear. This season will not be slow, it will not be gentle, and it will not give David time to heal. It's going to push him forward like fire behind him. Saul is failing on every side. He's losing control of his army, losing control of his mind, and losing control of his kingdom. Samuel is gone, the priests have been slaughtered, Ashbal is making moves, enemies are circling, and when Saul can't catch David the warrior, he will try to destroy David the son. David's family becomes the next target, and that is the kind of threat that changes a man completely. Because running for your own life is one thing, but when the danger reaches your mother, your father, your brothers, your blood, now you're not just running, now you're protecting, now you're building, and that's why I believe Episode 1 will feel like the true beginning of David's war. Not just war with swords, but war with choices, war with fear, war with destiny. The first look sets up that David is about to move fast and think faster because Saul's desperation makes him unpredictable. And the scary part is, desperate people don't care what they destroy as long as they don't feel powerless. Saul's biggest fear is not just David's strength, it's David's future. It's the idea that David is chosen. And when a king starts fighting a prophecy, he stops acting like a king and starts acting like a monster. That's why this Episode 1 first look carries so much tension. You can feel that the chase is no longer Saul versus David. It's Saul versus the truth. And the truth is coming closer every day. At the same time, David's side is growing, and I love how the story shows that his supporters are not perfect heroes. They're broken people, loyal people, angry people, wounded people, and people who have nowhere else to go. But they believe in David. And that belief is dangerous to Saul because armies can be defeated, but belief spreads like fire. David has Jonathan's support, and that friendship is still one of the most emotional parts of this whole series because Jonathan is living the pain of loving both sides, his father and his friend, knowing he can't save both forever. And even from this first look energy, you can tell Season 3 will squeeze that bond until it hurts. David is stepping into a life where every choice has a cost. If he stays close, Saul finds him. If he runs, Saul punishes the innocent. If he fights back, he risks becoming the thing Saul accuses him of being. And if he doesn't fight back, he risks losing everything he's trying to protect. That is the pressure of Episode 1. It's not just action, it's emotional suspense. Because the question isn't, can David win? The question is, can David stay David? Can he keep his heart clean while living in a world that wants him to become ruthless? And this is where the trailer title makes perfect sense. First look at David's war begins. Because this war is not just against Philistines or kings or armies, it's a war against fear, against revenge, against the temptation to take the throne the wrong way. And we already know David has chances to do that. He could end Saul. He could stop the chase in one moment. But if he does, what does that make him? That's why David's line stays powerful. He won't lift his hand against the Lord's anointed. People might call that weakness, but honestly, that is the exact reason David is dangerous. Because Saul is fighting with hatred, but David is fighting with purpose. And purpose lasts longer. Purpose wins in the end. Episode 1 is going to push David into motion. protecting his family, moving through harsh lands, gathering loyal men, and stepping into the identity he's been running from. And while Saul's kingdom is cracking from the inside, David's kingdom begins in the shadows, built from loyalty, sacrifice, and faith. That's what makes this first look so thrilling. It's not just teasing conflict, it's teasing transformation. David is about to become the leader people whisper about, the warrior people fear, and the king people aren't ready for yet. And the most suspenseful part is this: the closer David gets to the throne, the more violent the world becomes around him. So if this is only episode 1, imagine what the rest of season 3 is going to do to us. The reason this first look feels so heavy is because it makes one thing very clear. Saul is no longer thinking like a king. He is thinking like a hunted man who refuses to accept that his time is ending. And when someone like Saul becomes desperate, he doesn't just want to win, he wants to punish. He wants to hurt David in the one way David can't ignore. Because let's be honest, Saul has already tried everything. He tried traps, lies, secret plans, and armies. He tried turning people against David. He tried using fear and power like a weapon, and yet David still survives. David still slips away. David still keeps gaining supporters. So now Saul's anger becomes personal in a darker way. This time, instead of chasing David's footsteps, he goes after David's roots. He goes after the people who made David who he is. And that is the kind of move that forces David to stop being only a fugitive and start becoming a protector. Because when your family is in danger, running is not enough anymore. You have to think ahead. You have to lead. You have to make decisions that don't just save your life for one more day, but save everyone depending on you. And from the energy of this episode, one first look, you can feel David's mindset shifting. The fear is still there, of course. The pain is still there too, especially after everything with Mihal. But now there's something else rising inside him: responsibility. David is carrying people on his back now, and it's not only soldiers, it's family, it's refugees, it's loyal followers who have placed their lives in his hands. And Saul's next move pushes David into the kind of leadership that doesn't come from a crown. It comes from pressure. It comes from surviving when everything is trying to crush you. And what makes it even more suspenseful is that Saul's desperation is happening at the worst possible time for Israel. The kingdom is already shaking. The spiritual protection Saul once had is gone. Samuel's voice is silent now, and that alone changes the atmosphere of the entire story. Because Samuel wasn't just a prophet, he was the last thing standing between Saul and the consequences of Saul's choices. When Samuel cursed Saul and then died, it felt like the final door closing. Saul is alone with his madness, alone with his jealousy, alone with his fear of losing the throne, and a king who feels abandoned becomes dangerous in a way that normal enemies aren't. Normal enemies fight to conquer. Saul is fighting to avoid facing his own downfall. And that makes him unpredictable. One moment he is raging, the next moment he is crying. One moment he is hunting David, the next moment he is killing priests. Saul is not stable, and you can't negotiate with instability. You can't reason with it. You can only survive it. That's why episode 1 feels like it's going to be intense from the first minutes. Because David isn't just outrunning soldiers anymore. He's outrunning chaos itself. Now imagine what that does to David internally. David is not a cold-hearted man. He feels everything deeply. We've seen it again and again. He cares about people. He loves strongly. He mourns strongly. And that is exactly why Saul's move against David's family will hit him like fire. David can accept being betrayed. He can accept being hunted, but he cannot accept innocent blood being spilled because of him. And this is where his war truly begins, because it's not just a war of weapons. It's a war of choices, and every choice is painful. If David stays close to protect his family, Saul's army will close in faster. If David runs far, Saul might strike first before David can reach them. If David attacks Saul directly, David risks becoming the rebel Saul already calls him. And if David does nothing, he risks losing the people he loves most. You see the trap? Saul is trying to force David into a decision that will destroy him either way. That is Saul's plan, not just to kill David, but to break him. And this is where David's intelligence becomes just as important as his courage. David isn't only a warrior, he is a survivor, he senses danger, he reads people, he knows how to move before the enemy moves, and I believe episode 1 will show David doing exactly that, moving his people away from the blade before it falls, because David's strength has always been more than fighting. His strength is restraint. His strength is patience. His strength is knowing when to run and when to stand. And yes, to some people, running looks like weakness. But in David's story, running is often wisdom. It's protection. It's strategy. And what makes it thrilling is that David's retreats are never meaningless. Every time he escapes, he grows. Every time he loses something, he becomes more prepared for the throne. Every time Saul pushes him into the wilderness, David comes back stronger with more supporters and more experience. Saul thinks he's crushing David, but really he's building him. And this season, we are reaching the point where David's supporters are no longer just a small group of loyal men. They are becoming the beginning of a movement. People who are tired of Saul's madness, people who have lost faith in the palace, people who have been hurt by the king's choices. David's camp is not just a hiding place anymore. It's becoming an alternative, and that is the scariest thing to a ruler like Saul, because Saul doesn't just want David dead. He wants David forgotten. He wants people to stop believing in him. But belief is growing, and that is why Saul's attacks will become more brutal. Because when power is slipping, it tightens like a fist. Saul will squeeze harder, strike faster, and care less about who gets caught in the middle. At the same time, there's another layer of suspense that makes this first look even more emotional. Jonathan. Because Jonathan is standing between two destinies. He loves David and he also loves his father, but he knows the truth. He knows David is chosen. He knows Saul is wrong, and still he's trapped inside Saul's house watching his father sink deeper and deeper. You can almost feel that heartbreak building. Jonathan is the kind of character who makes this story painful in the best way, because he is good and goodness suffers the most in stories like this. And the closer David gets to his rise, the more Jonathan's position becomes impossible. He can't stay neutral forever. He can't protect both sides forever. And season 3 will push him toward moments that will hurt us. So when the episode 1 trailer says David's war begins, don't think only about battlefields. Think about pressure. Think about Saul targeting what David loves. Think about David being forced to lead before he feels ready. Think about Jonathan being torn apart inside. Think about a kingdom collapsing while a new kingdom is quietly forming in the wilderness. And that's why this first look is so exciting, because it's not only teasing action, it's teasing consequences. Everything is about to collide. Saul's fear, David's destiny, the people caught between them, and once that collision starts, there is no going back. What makes this first look so powerful is that it isn't only setting up war outside of David, it's setting up war inside of him. Because episode 1 is not just about Saul hunting David again, it's about David being pushed into the most dangerous question of his life. Is it time to fight Saul? Or is it time to keep running? And this is where the suspense becomes almost unbearable, because every viewer knows the truth. David could end it. He has the skill, he has the courage, he has loyal men who would follow him into anything. But David is not just fighting for survival, he is fighting for righteousness. He is fighting for the kind of kingship that doesn't begin in blood. And the trailer's energy makes me believe episode 1 will be one of those episodes where the tension doesn't come from who is stronger, but from who will stay faithful. Because David's path has never been easy, but in season 3 it becomes even more complicated. Now his small band is turning into something bigger, and that creates a new problem. The more people who join David, the harder it becomes to stay hidden. Every new supporter is a new risk. Every new campfire is a new sign in the wilderness. Every victory David earns draws more attention to him. And even though David might want to keep things peaceful, the world around him refuses to allow it. Saul refuses, the Philistines refuse, the shifting politics of Israel refuse. The enemies in the north and south refuse. Everything is pulling David toward battle, toward oral leadership, toward a life where escape is no longer possible. And that is why episode 1 will feel like a turning point. It will feel like the moment David realizes, I cannot keep living as a shadow forever. But here's what makes it even more thrilling. David is not rushing into battle like an angry man. He's moving like a chosen man, and that means he will seek something Saul never seeks. Saul acts from fear. David acts from faith. Saul makes decisions from jealousy. David makes decisions from God, and that difference is exactly why David becomes king and why Saul falls. And I believe the trailer is hinting that episode 1 will show us one of the most important moments of that difference. David asking God what to do, not asking for strength, not asking for revenge, not asking for power, asking for direction. That alone separates David from Saul because Saul's pride makes him think he is always right. David's humility makes him admit that he is not. And when a leader stops trusting his own emotions and starts trusting God's guidance, that leader becomes unstoppable, not because he is perfect, but because he is aligned with something bigger than fear. That is why David's decision will matter so much in episode 1. There will be a moment when it looks like the obvious answer is to fight Saul. David's men will likely feel that. The audience will feel that too, because we all want Saul to finally face consequences. After everything Saul has done, after the betrayal, the manipulations, the killings, many people watching will feel like the right thing is to end him. But David's story is not about doing what feels right. It's about doing what is right, and those are not always the same thing. Sometimes the hardest decision is the holiest one. That's why the ephod moment is going to feel huge, because it's like David is standing at a crossroads. If he fights Saul, he might win the battle, but he could lose the throne spiritually. If he runs, he might look weak, but he keeps his heart clean. And David knows deep down that the throne he is meant to receive is not a throne he is meant to steal. David is not like Saul. Saul grabbed power and then tried to control it. David is waiting for power to be placed in his hands by the right time and the right way. And that patience is painful. Honestly, it's painful even for us watching, because we want David to rise already. We want him to stop suffering. We want him to stop being chased like an animal. But David's rise isn't only about becoming king. It's about becoming a king worthy of Israel. And that worthiness is being tested right now. And the trailer's suspense hits hardest when we think about where this episode could end, because this first look clearly points us toward one specific place, the caves. And if you know this story, then you already feel the tension growing in your chest. The caves are not just a hiding place. The caves are where a decision could change history in 1 second, because the caves create the most terrifying kind of closeness. Saul and David in the same space, separated only by shadows and silence. And that is why the episode 1 ending, if it follows this path, could be one of the most intense cliffhanger moments the series has ever done. Imagine David hiding, breathing slowly, holding his men back while Saul is right there, close enough that David could strike, close enough that Saul could discover him, close enough that everything could end. And the suspense in that moment isn't only about death, it's about temptation. It's about David holding the future in his hands and choosing not to take it the wrong way. That's why this first look is so exciting. It's teasing the moment that separates David from every other man who wants power. Saul would kill for control. David refuses to kill for the crown. And that is why God is with him. That is why people follow him. That is why no matter how many times Saul attacks him, David keeps surviving, because David's destiny is protected by something Saul cannot fight. And the more Saul tries to destroy him, the more Saul ends up destroying himself. At the same time, this section of the story sets up another thrilling reality. David's life is no longer about a single enemy. Yes, Saul is the main threat, but David's world is getting bigger. Wars with the Philistines are coming, alliances are coming, new places are coming, new leaders are coming, and David is about to move from running through deserts to commanding battles. But he can't step into that future until he passes this test. The test of mercy, the test of faith, the test of whether he will be led by anger or led by God. And if episode 1 ends with Saul entering the cave, then the audience will be holding their breath, because we will all be asking the same question. Will David finally strike, or will he once again choose mercy? And honestly, that's what makes this season so special. It's not just going to be action-packed. It's going to be heart-packed, because David's battles are not only fought with swords, they are fought inside his soul. And the fact that he keeps choosing the harder path is the reason he becomes king.